Microphone check, 1, 2, what is this? It's the 5'7" assassin in the podcast business. I am your host, Rohan Patra, the rap music plug at your service.
Here we are again at the end of a rainbow.
The Rap Music Plug podcast presented by QLC TV is the remedy to the I don't have anything good to listen to problem. Through in-depth album and song reviews, as well as artist interviews and general rap commentary sprinkled in between on all of what the mainstream and underground rap scenes have to offer, this is your one-stop shop to knowing what to add to your queue, play next, or pop into your record player. Welcome to the show. What is up, family? Today I am joined by someone who has authored 2 entries into last year's best of list that I made in Never at Peace, Vegas Vic, member of the Wrecking Crew, host of the Call Out Culture podcast, who hails from the home of the cheesesteak, Nick Foles, Philly's own Zilla Rocca. How you doing, man?
What's going on, dude? Thanks. This is fantastic. Thanks for having me on.
No, man, I'm excited. Very excited to have you on. There's so much to talk about as it relates to just not only your music, but just kind of like how you approach your career. I think there's a lot that people can get from that, because I think there's a lot to learn. And I think your music, like especially this last album, you really get into some of that, and I find it really interesting.
Thanks, dude. I'm grateful when people can use my 15 years of failure and 2 years of success to get something good out of it. I'm happy to contribute.
So like a super obvious theme that one can get from your music is just that you're really passionate about hip hop and you truly love it. It's super clear. So how would you say that you really first got into it, and what really drew you in?
I just think because when I was young, rap was new. So it was like it wasn't, like Huey Lewis in the News, and it wasn't like, like the things that were the big things in the 80s when I was young. Like I loved all that stuff like Madonna and like Adam Ant and Michael Jackson. But it was like rap was like even newer than that. And it wasn't, you couldn't just hear rap like everywhere you could hear Michael Jackson or Prince. It was like a secret society. You know what I mean? It was like you could see Run DMC a little bit, you could see Fat Boys a little bit, but it was like, oh, like they're like clean, it's safe, like they're fine here and there to sprinkle in. And then once you hit like, even it was like Hammer and like Run DMC and like Vanilla Ice and Young MC, Tone Loc, these like the mid to late 80s, when it was like, again, you didn't hear of a lot of rappers, but if you did, they were like 5 million sales Pepsi commercials. And then so I was into that. And then once you hit like early 90s, like gangster rap, when it was like, whoa, like we're blurring all this stuff out. Like this is congressional hearings. That's when I was like, oh, I have to get into this. I have to. And that's like, it's like what we go through now when everybody wants to censor people or be like, get rid of that, ban that. It makes people be like, oh, what is it? You know what I mean? So it's exactly. Like, if people weren't so up in arms about NWA and Eazy-E and Dr. Dre and Snoop, I probably would have been like, oh, like rap's cool, all right. So I like some of those songs when it was like, again, like Tone Loc and Young MC and It Takes Two to Make a Thing Go Right. But then once it got like really dangerous and rebellious, I was like, okay, now I'm dedicated to this. Like I have to discover it. I have to buy it, hide it from my parents, talk to all my friends about it. So that actually really indoctrinated us.
I find that interesting to hear from like someone like you who came up and like grew up when it was still developing as a genre, because I got into hip hop, like obviously I'm a little younger. It was like mainly 2005. It was like late registration, kept seeing, and it's off just like my experience to get into it was just, it was I reaped the fruit of like all that work, because it was the new thing. It was like dominating the Much Music video charts. That's all I would watch in the morning. It would be so fun. And the whole idea of the controversy, that's like interesting, because that wasn't, like Eminem was still popping, but even then his controversial peak was still before me, like by a few years. Like he was just popular at that point. Like there was, he didn't really dominate things. I think the closest is Kanye, but like that doesn't compare at all in terms of like the the
No,
true vitriol towards like
correct.
entire groups of people because of like NWA and shit like that. So
Yeah, like Eminem being big in '05 was like still rock stations playing him, still winning Grammys,
yeah,
still having like his controversy was like more about gay and lesbian rights when the Slim Shady LP hit,
yeah,
you know, and then him being sued over like samples or um, stuff with him and his mom, like her being on like trashy daytime TV shows, but it wasn't like, oh, this is destroying our children like it
hmm,
was. Like still the early night, like late '80s, early '90s. It was like he was an acceptable rascal, you know,
yeah,
like
yeah,
he's dangerous, but he just made Interscope 80 million this year,
yeah,
you know,
yeah.
and they were okay with that.
You know, one other thing obvious is that you're from Philly, and that's something that's like always bleeding into your music. And how do you find that's influenced your music, but also just your career, like being from Philly?
It's a great question, dude. I think what people in Philly understand is like there's not a lot of beauty here. Like like it's like that picture of the album, which is like my desktop background too for my son. You know, that's a I mean, I played basketball in that building behind him. I went swimming in that pool. He and I live around there, and like it's grimy. You know what I mean? And it's not like we're struggling, but Philly isn't there to make you feel good. Like it's not designed to be like, hey, you can make it here. Like, hey,
Hmm.
there's like agents here and like press. Like we're close enough to things to make it happen, but it's not like a built-in system here compared to New York, Atlanta, Houston, LA, places like that. So I think what people in Philly innately understand is like I have to make it happen,
Mm,
and I will make it happen by just outworking you. And it's and so like that's kind of like the myth we tell ourselves because we don't have like easy passports to just pop off here.
yeah,
So like
yeah.
no Philly rapper is ever big because they stayed in Philly. They all had to leave. Like Fresh Prince went to overseas and toured, then he hit New York, then he toured the world with Jazzy Jeff. He didn't like stay in Philly and cake out. You know, and that he's the first one. So even with the Roots, overseas, tour the world, do all these things first before Philly even embraced them. So
Interesting.
it gives you that edge of like I'm going to outlast people just because I the grind isn't foreign to me. So a lot of people that I came up with or people that were popping when I was really trying to pop, they're gone. You know what I mean? Like they're just out of here.
Hmm.
And it's not like I've taken their place or anything, but I feel like having that idea of like we get what we work for here, it goes a long way. And it's cheesy to say. And like even my friends that are in the highest places you can be in the music industry, like two steps from the biggest people out in the world, they always say the higher up you go, even in the major label industry, you meet more people from Philly. You know what I mean? Like behind the scenes. So it was always
Mm,
really fascinating to me to hear that. But I was like, but it makes sense because we're just never gonna quit. And it's just
yeah.
cheesy to say, but I don't really know people from Philly that um, don't latch on and do stuff. You know, like I've known people in the Philly rap scene and I'm working for Obama. You know, like
Damn.
they were in the Philly hip hop scene, and then but it's like we just keep doing it. Like I don't know how else to explain it. Like Philly just has like a lot of longevity to our artists and our cultural exports, I guess you could say.
And one thing I as I mentioned in the intro here is that I feel like that probably helped you kind of sharpen not only like your musical craft but like your like the musical career part of it, the marketing, because like you said, you couldn't just go like, oh, I'll just go to these poppin' ass bars that like
Mhm.
everybody goes to that has like a culture of like all the greatest talent. Like I have a curious question actually. How far are you
Sure.
from New York City? How far is Philly?
So Philly's about 90 minutes south.
Oh shit.
Right.
Okay,
So
so
if you
that
depending on
explains a lot. Yeah.
right. So like all of us go to New York a lot. I mean, it's pretty easy, it's cheap. Um, but even when you go to New York, it's like Philly on steroids, just like the amount of people and the amount of movement. Like my friend always just joke about doing shows in Philly. He was like, in Philly, you have to tell 500 people to get 50 people to come to a show. In New York, you tell 50 people and 500 show up because everyone in New York is used to like coming and going and moving around.
Yeah.
Whereas in Philly, it's like Well, how far is that from where I live? Is that more than 10 minutes? How much is the cover? Is it more than $10? Well, it's like people here in terms of like music and culture and art, they're not like, oh, like I'm just out and about all the time. I go to this bar, I go here. In Philly, it's like you have to shake a lot of trees to get, to get opportunities to fall out of it. Where in New York, there's just so many people. It's like
Mm-hmm.
it would be weird if 50 people aren't at a venue.
That's interesting. Yeah, like obviously I don't like where I live, Ottawa. It's not similar in a lot of ways that you're describing, but the part that I latch onto is the idea that you're like close enough. You're actually like way closer, but
Mhm.
we're still close enough to Montreal. We're about like a 2 hour drive, to give or take, and then Toronto's about a 4.5, 5 hour drive.
Whew, that's a
That's
rough. That's
the
rough.
but that's the classic thing where everybody's like in Ottawa, but they all want to leave because you're just close to the fun shit. And like those are the two
Right.
biggest things to have any concerts, entertainment in Canada. Like
Right.
it's you get this weird complex, I find. Like you get this weird like
Mm.
inferiority complex, or just like, oh yeah, nothing happens in Ottawa. And it's such a self-fulfilling prophecy sometimes.
Yeah, like Philly used to feel like that. And then like in the last 12, 15 years, we had a huge influx of restaurants, bars, chefs. Like our food is amazing. And we had
Mm,
like for a while before like Diplo and then blew up, we had like Hollertronics parties where him and like low budget, they were here doing shows, like all the Baltimore club music and all that. We had like Freeway and PD Crack doing a lot of stuff, and then Meek
that's
Mill.
dope.
Like we had like a run where things were all kind of rising at the same time. Whereas now I just feel like everything's more decentralized, so you don't really have to be in the like physically be in spots to blow up, with the internet.
Yeah.
Um, but if you still don't feel like you can go, like you said, go to somewhere where something can happen that night, it's still like, do you want to do it or not? Do you want to make that run?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. Um, I want to get into this Vegas Vic album. I
Okay.
find it's interesting in a lot of different ways. And just off the jump, I love that album title and I love that album
Thanks.
cover.
Thank
And
you.
I think I heard you talk about this on another podcast. I think it was Call It Culture when you were talking about
Okay.
this album. But what's the thought process behind that album title, Vegas Vic?
Yeah, man. It's at the time it was like just a phrase I liked, like in the daily news in Philly, they would have um you would go like the sports, right? And when I was a kid growing up, like we were in high school, we would get the daily news every day because you would be in study hall or be on the train. We wouldn't have cell phones, so we would just like all hoard the daily news to see what was happening in sports and gossip and news. And in the sports section, I have a thing called Vegas Vic, where he would do picks, being
Mm,
like, all right, tonight I like Georgetown giving 3.5, Vegas Vic 6 pack of picks, whatever. And so, and then that's the name like the giant neon dude in Las Vegas, the cowboy. Um, and so I just always thought that was ill play on words, just how it sounded. And then like a loose alias I had when we did the Wu Tang Pole record was Vic Sage, and like I'll say Vic every once in a while on
hmm.
songs. So I just like, oh, that'd be fun for me to like throw in a song. So I made the song Vegas Vic with Darko, produced it. Darko the Super, shouts to him. And we were making songs, making the record, and me and Disco Vietnam, we were like going through the album, like what are we gonna call this thing? Because originally it was titled Hired Gun, and so I was like, yeah, I think Hired Gun's like not as strong anymore. The more songs we're making, and so we were talking, and we were just like both came to a consensus, like it has to be called Vegas Vic. And I always think that's cheating. Like I don't like to name stuff
Hmm.
after. I just don't like that. I feel like it should be bigger than a song. Um, but then once I picked it, I was like, the album is not a Vegas album. You know what I mean? It's not like about going to the Sands or going to on some Ocean's 11.
Hmm.
But I was like, I've always loved those things, and I was like, what is it? Like, what does that phrase mean about me? I've been to Vegas, I've been to Atlantic City a million times, but I was like, it's really about doing this all and like owning your stuff, meaning like
Yeah.
you take control, you bet on yourself, and that's something I've just been betting on myself
Hmm.
since like 2004, and most of the times I lost. It's like going to a casino, you're gonna lose a lot, or even like playing what's in the stock market, like you're gonna lose a lot because you can't time like when things are gonna hit. You don't know. And so people get sucked into that world. Now it's like with the NFTs and crypto, like, oh, I'm just gonna like jump in and jump out and make a bag of money.
Hmm.
And it's like, you could, but mostly the house is gonna take you, bro. Like the
Yeah.
odds are not in your favor to get a bag of money really quick. So I think Vegas Vic over time, after he and I picked it, I was like, it's really about like betting on yourself. And so the record, when I looked at it, I was like, yo, I'm not calling in a lot of favors. Like we don't have the names like we've had on other records before, where I had like Rock Marcy and Geechee Suede and
Mm.
Nature and Malik B and J Zone and Blockhead and Vic Spencer. Like it's just me and my friends. And so I was just like, I really think I felt good with that. I was like, I feel good where I could just bet on that to sell a record and for that to be a standalone. Like even like Disco Vietnam, like when we started that record, he wasn't all over Pete Rosenberg. You know, he wasn't working with Ghostface and Crime
Mm.
Apple and Rock Marcy like that. And then he all of a sudden became like this in-demand dude, like all these terrible SoundCloud cats like getting at him. And he's like, no, I don't want to work with you, bro. I don't do this to be in that space. I just want to
Yeah.
work with who I like to work with. So it wasn't mapped out, but then it kind of fit. You know what I mean? It's like going like your parents' house or your grandma's house or something like that. And you see like one of your old relatives' jackets, and it could be like from the 70s, and you put on, you're like, wow, I just feel like this was always for me, this coat. You know what I mean?
Mm.
And you know what I mean? Like I kind of saw it and put it on. I'm like, ooh, this is right. Like I don't have to get it fixed or anything or hemmed up. So it's, in a roundabout way, that's really what it, because that's what I thought about. I was like, I just always have done that.
Hmm.
I've lost thousands of dollars, thousands of hours in my life. But you play these games long enough, you just stay in it, and it's gonna come out aces for you down the line.
Yeah. I like that that was your explanation for the title. And I like just generally when, because it's not like you're making, like, you made like a concept album where you're like Vegas
Right.
Vic is like this character in every, which is fine if you did, but
Hmm.
you didn't do
Right.
that. But that's exactly what I took from it, which I
Mm.
like when an artist can kind of communicate that in a way that's like still subtle. But that's kind of what I got. Betting on yourself, again, talking about that like self-empowerment and
Right.
taking shit into your own hands. And I find that's really cool. And it's interesting the way you said that, because Vegas, obviously, like you said, the house usually wins, but even in like this kind of like concept, you're actually kind of saying like the more you put in, eventually you'll get it, which is definitely not what you would say to someone who gambles. Like, oh, just keep putting money, eventually they'll be coming out aces. That's not how it works.
Yeah,
But
like if
in the
if you
sense
just
you
go
did
to
it,
Vegas,
exactly.
yeah, like if you, all my friends, we would go to Atlantic City and stuff. If you brought $200, you're gonna get wiped out quick. You know what I mean? Like you're not gonna hit on playing blackjack with $200 or slots. You gotta bring like $1,000, which means you're gonna sit at that table for 4 or 5 hours. You know what I mean? As long as you don't go crazy, going all in, but like the time being like Prem's put this tweet up yesterday, which I love. Prem was just like talking about, band camp day and all that. And Prem was like, I used to go city to city and was thrilled if people bought one or two copies of my album Mark's Wild Years. And that's when I first linked with Prem. And he's like, now I just posted up on Bandcamp and it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, but that was a 10-year run in between when he first put it out and hoping people would buy it and losing all this money doing all these shows and traveling. And now he could just sit back and be like, oh, it's up now. I could post it on my page, out of here. And that's what he said on his tweet, being like, yo, you really can't substitute anything for just continually being out there, and people will find you and you'll find your crowd. You know what I mean? That's really, there's no sexiness about it, but that's really the truth. That
Yeah.
applies to me.
And you mentioned Disco before. Like, what was his influence on this record specifically? Because I think this is the first time you significantly worked with him too, right?
Yeah, we've always been like, like work on each other's stuff or like do songs together. Like he did Favors or Bad News one with Arm& Hammer, all future former rapper. He did a song off Wu-Tang Pope with Castro. Um, he's always just been around, and he and I just been friends for a long time. And he's just an amazing musician. I think he's a really smart person, and I think he's unbelievably like pure and creative. Like he only will do things in service of the record,
Mm.
and with that in mind, he will give you feedback that is in service to the record, not so much like what you're in love with. You know what I mean? You may be in
Interesting.
love with this, but he'll be like, I get it, but if you take these steps or make these changes, it gets even better. You know what I mean? And we'll try it out. And so having that trust in him, it was big because I'm so self-sufficient. After a while, you get bored of like, okay, here I am making songs by myself, and everyone's just thrilled that you picked their beat and they gave you a verse. Like no one's gonna sit there and be like, change that. That's not good. Like everyone's like, especially in the age of email and producers and stuff, like people just want to get in the mix. They're not gonna sit there and be like, I don't like what you did to my beat. I don't like it. Do the second verse again. And it's not their fault. It's just like we're not together to do that.
Yeah.
Like we're not in the room. We don't see each other like that and have those relationships like we used to have to do. So he and I have that relationship where he can be like, nah, dude, do that song again. Like come at it with this type of energy. Or like, actually, I liked how you did it the first time. Let's get rid of the version you just did. I was wrong. So it's really important to have that relationship with people. If you don't, that's cool. Like I've done a lot of stuff totally on my own with minimal pushback from people. That feels great. But if you want to go down that road to make yourself better, you have to listen when someone that you trust is like, this could be better, bro. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And just go with it. Even if you disagree, you're like, I don't know. I don't think it can. Well, I'll try it out. It's worth giving it a chance. And so he was pretty invaluable in that regard.
I find it's also, yeah, I find it potentially is harder to even give the feedback sometimes than on the receiving end. I find like I can receive feedback even if it's tough and like, make changes. But sometimes it's just tough, especially if you like the person, your friends. Sometimes it's hard to be honest and be like, yeah, like you said, that's a special friend that is also creative to say like, yeah, do that again. That's actually not your best work. Like that, it just hits a lot of, you don't want to be mean, but that's very special. That's not easy to do.
Yeah,
Give
but
real
you
feedback.
have to let people know like it's coming out of love. It's not mean if you're like, listen, I'm saying this because I care about you. Like, and I'm gonna say it in a way that I care about you. If you say it like a dick, or if you're just not giving context, be like, that sucks. Do it again. Well, I'm gonna be like, F you.
Yeah.
Like I'm hurt. You know what I mean? Like, why would you say that to me? Versus like, yo, check it. I think the energy for that is cool. But when I hear this song, I feel like the energy could be more DMX. It could be more Evidence. It could whoever. It could be Megan Thee Stallion. I want you to think about it like that and try it that way because I think we can move it up in terms of the overall product versus, yeah, man. I mean, you just did it like that. I don't know. That works for me because I don't want to make you sad. So I'm gonna bite my tongue. I'm like, that's not being a real friend. You just have to build that. Like you said, it's hard. Like it took me a long time too. I used to really struggle with that because I don't want to get in a conflict with somebody that I liked, but they respect you more when you're like, I'm going to tell you honestly, like it's not a good idea, man. And here's why. Here's why. I'm not just saying it to throw you off. Like I put thought into it because I care about you. And, and once you can develop that skill, it's it's a lot easier because people know where you stand versus do you really like it or you afraid to ruffle my feathers?
Yeah, and I think the results were great because I really do feel on that Vegas Vic record like you approach songs very distinctly. Like I like that, especially it showed up in the hooks. Like I could tell that you gave like a different energy to a certain track, and it made it like pop like that much more. Like I think it's Merv Griffin Enterprise, right? Where the hook is like, I need the fucking fortune like the wheel. Is that
right?
Yeah. I don't know.
Yep.
That shit has been in my head the last few days.
Nice.
I just feel like the way you approach it, so like that energy is a little different than on other songs, and it's so fucking catchy.
Thanks, man. That beat pushed it like that.
That song, that's my favorite. Oh my god, that's
man,
my favorite.
I actually got to perform that song once at Prem's album release show in Brooklyn back in like spring, summer. It was like him, Fatboy Sharif, Woods came out and did a couple songs. It was a great night, but I was just like, it was just me doing my verse because Castro couldn't pull it off and Alaska couldn't make the show. So I did like a whole intro to it and did it. But I was just like, that beat feels like running downhill. You know what I mean? Like or even like a football. It feels like a kick return. Like Devin Hester, like breaking, like stop and start and then cut, and then 80 yards later, gone. Like that beat. I remember when I heard it and I was like, and that was the name of the beat. The beat was called Merv Griffin Enterprises. And I was like, yo, that title's crazy. And I was like, all right, rap came along, then it incentivized this, syndicate me. because they used to come on at the end of Wheel of Fortune. Merv Griffin Enterprises. So I was like, oh, that's crazy. And so I was like, all right. And then I kind of modeled it after Iron Maiden by Ghostface, the first song on Iron Man, where it's like him, Ray, and Kappa. And it's just like boom, boom, boom. And it's just like so high energy, it sets it off. And so like I made it and I was like, this should be the album opener. For me, I was like, no question about this album. This opens up the album. That's why there's like a movie clip at the beginning where dude's talking. I'm like, this sets off the album. And then when it came to Arrange a Disco Via, when he was a Barry, was like, nah, bro, $5 God opens the album. And I was like, what? Huh? No. And he's like, yeah, no, trust me. We got to be subversive. We got to go Radiohead. We got to be subversive. The opener should be something that like makes you stop and ponder for a second. It shouldn't be like rowdiness. Like that's what people expect. And I was like, really? And then he was right, because everyone's like always like loving $5 God. Like that always jumps out to people. So he nailed it.
It hits a nice spot in the middle part of the album that really pops up. Yeah, and I love Alaska's fucking verse on that too. Yeah, the beat shimmers. It's like I love its mixing, like the way it's mixed particularly. It's just like, oh, it's great.
Fantastic.
And one thing I've referenced this before, because I really love the comment from Dano, Free Music Empire, is that he was like, oh, your hook game really increased on Vegas Vic. And as soon as I heard him say that, I always have caught how good the hooks are on this album.
Thanks.
And it makes me just think generally, as like a seasoned vet like yourself, like how do you find you've been able to continuously improve and make refinements to your craft?
It's all effort, man. It's like when I was first starting out, I was in my first rap group. I was like the lyrical, deep, heady guy, and my rap partner was like the charismatic, pretty boy, like melodic, catchy dude. And so my hooks to me should be like Raekwon hooks or like Mobb Deep hooks, where it's like it sounds like a verse and you just stack the vocals or something. And he'd always be like, no, like it can't be that. Like the verse is the verse. The hook can't be the verse too. And I was like, man, Raekwon does that. And he was like, nah, dude, like he does that because he does that. No, like that's what makes him special. Like Method Man doesn't do that. You know, Old Dirty doesn't do that. I was like, you're right. So being around him, like early on, I was a better rapper than him, like lyrically, but then he was like a better like performer, like flow hooks. And so I was like, okay, like how do I get into his world with that? And then my next group I was in that group, my friend was like the lyrical dude, like the heavy lyrical dude. I was like, okay, then I got to be like the hook guy in this group. And then over time, he started getting really good at hooks too. So it was always like something you're aware of and to improve on. For me, it's not like a natural thing. Whereas now, when like lyrics and songs pop in my head from other people, I'm always like, man, that should have been the hook for this song, man. Like, why did you lead that in the verse? And then I even kind of cheated, like when we did what was Prem on 96 Mentality. I'm wearing a shirt, it's hilarious. Prem, we did a song called Paul Newman, produced by Disco Vietnam. And the hook is like feeling like Paul Newman, where he's like doing what him does if it's there for the doing. And he said that on the first Career Crooks album on a song called Newlywed. And I was always, that phrase was always in my mind. So I was like, Prem, use that 2 bars from Career Crooks and do that as a hook on this new song. You know what I mean? I was like, that should be the hook. Like, that's the catchiest thing you say. So he was like, all right, let's do it. So then that became the song Paul Newman. So I always hear that. Like, I'll hear phrases people say, and I'm like, that's a chorus. You know what I mean? Like, I'll see people tweet stuff, and I'm like, that's a hook, bro. Like, I'm always like, because that's the part that's memorable. You know what I mean? Like, it makes the song pop when there's a break from the heavy lifting of barring out, you know what I mean? Or a concept or a story. And then like you start studying people whose hooks that stick in your head all the time. Like for me, it was always like Kanye or like Mikey Rocks or like Q-Tip or Busta, like Slum Village. They would have those. You know what I mean? It's like, why is that always in my mind? Like what is their formula? Like how do they map this out? Or Dilla had great hooks. You know what I mean? It's like that to me is like harder to do than just spit 12 bars or 16 bars or something, you know what I mean? Or even like Camp Low, like, you know, this is it, what? Lucci born from the sky, let's get rich, what? Let you get my sugar down.
With them generally, just as performers, they had from like even in the verses, like they clearly had an ear for like what's catchy. because obviously like their
Right.
flow is like another fucking
And
planet.
and all the rhymes
Yeah.
are like indecipherable, like Bronx fly 70s exoticness, where like no
Yeah.
one could spit their bars, but everyone knows the hook.
Hmm.
And so it's like, if you're from the BX Connect, sugar, come on. If you're from the Cherry QB, sugar, come on. Like, get the break. And then the rest of the verse can be about, sarsaparillas and Zanzibars. Those dudes are the best. You know what I mean? But like the hook is the juicy part.
Hmm. I find like obviously the underground these days, like it's so much more common now to get music that does not have hooks, because
Right.
before that, but I'm hoping we kind of get like a market correction, because that tends to happen in
Mm.
music. Like
Yep.
there's a trend, everybody goes super hard in it, and then some people start to like be subversive, where they actually do try to focus on, let's make some good hooks too. And artists like yourself, even I'm seeing in some artists that are just like kind of popping off now, like even Luca. He
Mm.
had like a crazy 2021. I know his last album, that was one of my biggest takeaways, that the other album had like zero hooks. I think it actually had
Mm.
no hook for the entire 40 minutes. And then this one, it's about an hour long, and every song mostly has a hook. And it was like, damn, you can actually, and he like really killed it too. And I was like, that's interesting to like kind of like subvert that norm, because I thought he'd just be one
Right.
of those artists that like doesn't do the hook thing, which is cool, but like it's
Right.
cool. It's cool.
And you're
I
right about
hope
the
it adds
subversion.
something.
Like the whole indie world, like the last 3-4 years, they were rebelling, where if all major label rap and rap people hear the entire song is a hook,
Yeah.
then I will do no hooks, which is
Hmm.
smart, like to zig when people are zagging. But then, and to me, it's like, okay, now we're getting too far into that place, to where, like, for
Hmm.
me, Stove God Cooks, like, once Reasonable Drought hit, I was
Ooh.
like, dude, I can't go back to this stuff anymore. When he's like, yo, I'm gonna take that style you're doing over the Rock Morrissey beats, and then do, Rose Rose Brake Lights. I'm just
Yeah.
trying to be special. I'm like, he's rapping better than you on beats you would pick, doing hooks. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like, and being funny. I'm like, he's the evolutionary me next step. Like, he's the market
That's a
correction the
good
other
point.
way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I see that. I see that. He's yeah. I'm really psyched to hear when he drops another solo record, because yeah, he's been like the hook guy. He's been like a Nate Dogg of Griselda for the last like year now. He's on
Like,
everything they
once he
do.
came out, dude, it's hard for me to want to listen to a Conway album all the way, or a Benny album, or a West Side, like, because he adds that element. Like, they built that like, they walked up those steps.
Hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, went up 1,000-step Buddhist monastery off a mountain, and then he just like was on in their backpack the whole time. He just jumps off their shoulders, like, okay, I
Hmm.
made it too. Thanks for
Yeah.
doing that. I'm here. And so for me, it's like he he gives you just that one more piece to make it even more sizzling. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
Versus, okay, like, here's the scary piano roll with no drums, and like you just doing two verses with really nothing.
Hmm.
It's just kind of like the snake eating its tail.
Yeah. Yeah. When you were talking about like feedback before, I found something interesting from when I spoke to Castro late last year when we interviewed
Mhm.
him. He mentioned that it's pretty common for you guys to like send over your records to like your other wrecking crew members to just like get feedback prior to the
Right.
release, to just get the pick their brains kind of thing. I found that really cool.
Definitely.
I'm curious, like, what do you feel like? Is there anything particular that you think you get from certain members of the crew? Like, I'm just saying small pro of he's the producer.
Mhm.
So like maybe you come to him for like, oh, how are these beats sounding? Or Castro for album sequence, track sequencing.
Right.
Like, do you have any particular things from the artist that you go to
Hmm.
particularly for?
It's a great question. Like who specializes in what?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm curious, because
I
you
think,
guys
like,
all have like obviously impeccably talented, but I'm sure there's
oh,
something.
thanks, man. Yeah, it's just more like it's like quality control again from people you trust, because they're gonna say, like, they're looking out for you to be like, hey man, I think there's a blind spot, like, you didn't catch this, and again, I'm
Hmm.
saying it out of love, or have you consider maybe adding this person to the song, or like putting this song last instead of in the middle. So it's more just like general brainstorming. We it, honestly, like, we're all of us just have so many more things happening all the time, whether with each other or separately, to where it's not as common as it was maybe like in 2018,
Hmm.
2017, or something like that. We just have so many things happening where we forget, or sometimes we're working with a label, or sometimes there's another producer involved or somebody else. But we hear things in stages, and then like I remember like when Human Zoo, I heard the first draft of Human Zoo, and I was like giving it sound last, like, man, this song with Alex Ludovico is crazy, like this song, but maybe this one may want to cut these three. You know what I mean? Because then he was like, just give us your honest feedback so far. And I was like, me and Castro were like, these three, I just don't think fit this album. Like, I think they're cool, but it's redundant. Like, you've already hit these concepts.
Yeah.
And then the final version of Human Zoo, when it came out months later, was remarkably different and way better. I was like, damn.
Yeah.
So I was like blown away. I was like, this is not the same record. So it's cool to hear stuff like that, you know, when you hear things in progress and then the final version versus like even like the Andrew album, which I just put out yesterday. Like,
oh, dope. Really liking it.
Oh, thanks, dude. Like that, even that, like I was talking to the last guy, he hadn't even heard it, you know what I mean? So, and I forgot to send it. I'm like, oh, I just forgot to send you. He's doing Andrew before all of us. So it's like, sometimes you just like get in that world. Like I just forget to loop people in. Other times I'm like, yo, I really want you to hear this because I'm stuck. Or I think, you giving me feedback would really right the ship. So it's kind of like case by case now, but I don't really go to, I don't think it's like you're saying, like a specialized thing. I think it's more like the floor is open. You know what I mean? Anybody could say whatever they want about the arrangement or the mix or who should feature or what songs you should cut or whatever. And again, like not every time people heed that advice, but it's available and people do listen, which is great.
Yeah.
Like we're over that stage in our careers and our lives, like being sensitive or being mad. Like, oh, I would care. Don't, Castro, why are you so mean to me about, you always say that to me. Like, we're past that. Or like, Prem just saying that because he don't want me to outshine him. Like, if we were like 24, that was like how we all were, just like insecure dudes. But we're just like, you're an amazing artist and a friend of mine. Like, I'd be stupid out there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, that's good. That's good. And I feel like 2021 was like felt like a level up. Like everybody's art, like everybody's album just felt like, oh, this is their best shit. And like you had two entries into that, Prem. Like, I mean, and it was the common, like, and everybody was saying that. It was like not just my opinion. It was crazy. Human Zoo, fucking Prem's record, your record, Castro's record, like it's wild.
Thanks, man.
So I want to get into Career Crooks now because dope album, obviously, and a really dope name, not really of the record, but of just your group. I find that super cool. What is the meaning of like Career Crooks? I think I've heard you explain this one time, but I'm not exactly sure. So yeah, like what does Career Crooks mean?
I mean, I just was listening to a lot of Jay-Z on So Ghetto, which is like one of my favorite songs ever. Career Crook, nobody rap Brooklyn like me. Jacob Man, Volume 3, I'm back looking like me. And so when me and Small Pro were making the first album, I was really big on names. I was like, we need to name this. It can't just be like Zilla Rocca and Small Pro. Like it should be something like Run the Jewels. You know what I mean? Like that could have just been called LP and Mike, the album. You know what I mean? And so for me and him, I was like, if we have a name, it makes this different. Like it makes it a real thing, not just like, you did all the beats, I do all the raps, you're solo, I'm solo. Yeah. So when we were looking for names, I was listening to Jay and I told him, I was like, yo, that just sounds good. Like the alliteration and like career. To me, it was like, as being in hip hop, like we steal. Like, that's the point. Like everything we do is dangerous. Like whether it's like the low lifes in New York stealing polo or like, Vanilla Ice stealing, you know what I mean? David Bowie and Queen. That's what rap is. Like we identify things in other cultures and genres and be like, this is the best part of that. I'm taking it. It's mine. And so I thought about Small Pro, where he's always loved taking famous samples and putting his own spin on it. And then like when his name, Small Professor, like Jesus Christ.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
Yeah, exactly.
So I felt like for us, it just made a lot of sense to run with it. And I just thought it was cool. And then once he got on board with it, like my man Just FCA, shouts to him, he did the artwork for the first album. He did the EPs we did, the remix project. He did this. Like he ran with it by putting the logo. Like once he heard that name, he created the logo with the skulls and all this. And then the merch did really well for the first album, where I was like, wow. And so to me, it became like, okay, like this is a thing now. Like my vision connected. Like it needs to be its own pairing, not just like the same thing with Shrapnel. Like Shrapnel could have just been called Curly Castro and Prem Rock, but they wanted it to be something like separate. And but when you hear that name, you're like, I know what that is now. Like I know these guys
Yeah.
separately. I know the larger crew, but like I know what that is when they're plugged in. And so that's kind of like something we always love to do. You know, so like Castro and me have like Griff Company, and then Castro and Smalls are like Blue Edwards, like me and
Yeah.
Alaska are Cargo Colts. Like it's always gonna be that
I
to
find
be
that
like
really
this is a
cool.
separate thing.
It's like
Thanks,
it
man.
definitely like it's like just a good for like branding. It just makes it seem like something. And it's also cool to be like as I was kind of getting into more Wrecking Crew music last year,
Mm.
that was a nice surprise to be like, wait, who's Cargo Cults? And I'm like, oh, interesting. And then like I just
Right.
kept noticing, like, damn, you guys really do this all the time. And it's funny, Castro actually, like, I didn't ask him this question, but when he was just talking about Shrapnel, about whatever we were talking about,
Mm.
he got into like how he like decided to work with Prem on this, and he said the exact same thing pretty much as you said, which is like
Right.
you don't want it to just be Curly Castro and Prem Rock. You
Right.
want it to make it something. So I can see
Like
the feedback
you
and
want it to be Arm
the
and Hammer.
yeah.
You see them like Arm and Hammer means something to people now. You know what I
Mm-hmm.
mean? Like I knew them before when they were first sending Arm and Hammer songs over, and like they had just started. I was recording those sessions with Castro for like race music,
Mm.
and half measures. Like before they came out, I'm like, oh, these dudes are linking up. This is like a thing.
Mm-hmm.
I was like, this is gonna be crazy. You know what I mean? I was like, whoa. And then 9-10 years later, like these dudes sell out, do whatever they want, and work with everybody we're all lusting for. But
Mm-hmm.
again, it's like if it was Billy Woods and a Lucid, it's like it's still cool. I just think it's like I think there's more power in names than people give credit to. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like again,
I
like Run
really
the
agree.
Jewels. Like
Mm-hmm.
Run the Jewels means something to a lot of people versus like LP and Killer Mike.
Yeah,
Like
like you
them.
couldn't make like their obviously their trademark whatever thingy, the Run the Jewels stuff. Like you couldn't even do that. If it was Killer Mike and
Right.
LP, you could. It
Yeah,
just
like here's
doesn't
L
hit.
E L,
Yeah.
like it doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
Like Mike, K, you can't do that with your hands. You're right. You need the hand
Yeah.
gestures for branding.
Yeah. So how did you meet Small Pro? Like how did you guys first connect?
We back when like blogs were first hitting in like 2005 through 7 or something like that. I was just trying my best to get on blogs and like reaching out to people and sending like mailing them my CD in the mail and shit. And he was like the first other Philly person I saw that was like in those spaces. And I was like, who
Mm.
is this dude? And then I met him at a show, and then we just kicked it. And I was like, yo, like we should work. And he had just put out a remix album called Crooklyn Gangster, where he remixed Jay-Z,
Mm.
American Gangster. And then I started like doing the science on his beats, and I was like, whoa, like this is very rappable. And so he would just send me joints, and then I was just like work on them quick. And so he was the first person I was like really working with. And so then after we started doing that, it was like he started getting more involved with all of us and on his own, and just staying prolific, getting busy. And after years and years, I was always like, man, like I always do shows, and I always have like 2 or 3 small pro beats in the set, like
Mm.
always. Um, and so then after a while, then we started a group and everything. But when he and I connected, I was like, I got all of his references, like the beat titles, samples he was picking. I'm like, I know what you're doing. Like I
Mm.
see through this, bro. Like I get it. Okay, we're meant to be friends and work. So it's been a long time, but it's just easy. You know what I mean? And
Mm-hmm.
it should be effortless. You know what I mean? It's just sometimes like his stuff will throw me for a loop, but most of the time I'm like, I know what to do with this. You know what I mean?
And
Like yeah.
I think the career this latest Career Crooks album, I feel like I've listened to a lot of Small Pro beats over the years, but this one, like he did push you into some like new places. And I hear the famous samples thing. You said he likes to do that. There are
Yeah.
some, but
Yep.
man, the flips, there's some wacky beats on here, and I think just really hit. Like I think this is my favorite batch of Small Pro beats, like
Oh
100%. Like
wow.
I was very impressed.
I think it's his. I think it's his
Yeah.
too, because he kept saying like all the lag time it took from when we initially like wrapped up everything to when it came out. I'd hit him up. I was like, dude, what's going on, man? Like, why is this taking so long? and he would just say, yo, because when I'm done with this, like the amount of work I'm going to put into this, like this is going to be my favorite produced thing I've done. You know what I mean? Like this is it. And so he took that time to do some beat switches and interludes and take some things out. Like that was all him. Like all the vocals were done. You know what I mean? And he was spend a lot of time just mixing, like learning how to mix his own stuff the way he wanted it to sound. Because he had like some up and down experiences with engineers. So this one he was like, let me dedicate the most time to my stuff because I want to be the most proud of it. And so whenever he hears this, I'll text him when we're done. But that was like his main objective was
Yeah,
to
man, the
have his
transitions, the
best stuff.
little song detours, like the flow, that was like all those details were
Mm,
very like Alchemist-esque. Because like when I think about a record that's done that recently, that just felt like it was just perfect little bits of dialogue or like
mhm,
the song, like I'm thinking of Haram, because like that was my
mm.
biggest thing that I was super impressed with the Alchemist, that he just did such a great job with that. Um, what do you love so much about a small pro beat? Like what resonates with you like in his style?
His style is just like very dynamic. Like his like there's beats I made, there's beats other producers send me where it's like it's just kind of plotting or like it has like an element that's cool, but nothing gives you like an emotional reaction to do something. And
Mm,
his beats always have movement. You know what I mean? It's like you know what I mean? It would be like if you go to a graveyard, right? You go to graveyards, not a lot happening. But if you went to a graveyard and there was like squirrels running around and like birds flying, you're like, okay, like there's life here. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Things are
yeah.
moving, like literally things are happening. So with his stuff, it's like his music to me has always just been him and Disco Vietnam, like the most eminently rappable joints where I don't have to sit there and be like, what is this beat about? Like, what would I write? What's the song telling me? Like, where the sometimes you have to do that, like if you really want to make something different, but
Mm-hmm.
his stuff is always there's always like an urgency and like a charge to it, like a punch.
Yeah,
Like his shit is
yeah,
like a punch in
yeah.
the gut. It's always hitting. Even the beats I don't pick, they still hit. You know what I mean? Where I'm like, you know, it may be like the way he chops a sample or like where the bass line is or something, you know, and he'll go anywhere. Like he's done Lex Luger beats, he's done like weird time signature beats, he's done beats with no drums, beats with crazy drums manipulated with he and his brother is a drummer. Like he's hit every style there is to hit, but it has like his signature to it. So like in this era of like no drums, I'm always telling him like you got to be the drum guy. You got to
Yeah,
stand up and be like I'm the
he's
best drum
always
guy.
got the
What?
drums, man. He's always got the
Like
drums.
right,
Yeah.
like own that. When the like you said, when the market's like course correct and be like, okay, I'm the guy. I'm the best drum dude. You don't even do drums. I make the best drums.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. Um, one thing, one of my favorite tracks on this album is with a Logic, Dame Dash taught me.
Mm.
Um,
A blueprint, blueprint.
oh, sorry, fuck, my bad.
That's
I was
cool.
getting, I don't know why I got that mixed up. Oh, it's because I was listening to, okay, that's
Super
random
Duty
sidetrack. I just
and the
literally was
Logics on
listening to, I was listening to
whoever's
Logic's album like yesterday.
so good.
Yeah.
Autopilot, yeah, the drums banging.
But no, that track is fucking dope as shit. And
Mm.
what you're
Thanks.
talking about, what you both are talking about is super interesting and I think really, really impactful. And I'm just thinking like just generally in our time of like COVID, obviously, but just in the general age of streaming, it's a
Mhm.
kind of treacherous terrain for a lot of indie artists. At least that's how they would take it, or at least some
Right.
people would take it. And I've noticing, and I'm sure you have, like the DIY self-sufficient approach to making music and your career is becoming so much more popular. And do you find that's a positive trend, or do you feel like it's more like, all right, this is what you got to do to a necessary evil to like stay afloat?
I mean, I'm in a different space than most indie artists. Where like, music has never been my full time job. I
Mm-hmm.
wanted it to be for a decade plus. Like that was my goal was to live off music. It just never lined up for me like that. And so the good news is that because it's not, when I do work on it and the marketing side, the creative side, you know, the production side, it's like my favorite thing to do. You know what I mean? And it's like how they always say, like the biggest innovations in technology have come from people that worked in the company, but on the weekends and at nighttime, they're spending all their time working on this other thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like that's the thing they like. And so for me, music's that way. And I think like this past in 2021 is the most money I ever made off music ever. Like four times.
Great, man.
You know what I mean?
That's great.
And what was different was like no shows. I did one show, but it was the amount of product we put out. There was the amount of value we created with the show, with consulting artists, with variety of releases on a lot of different platforms. It was just more like, how do you give people enough value to make them want to keep supporting you? And so just putting out one album, I mean, you could do that. Just working on a podcast, you could do that. There's a lot of stuff like, and we're not the only ones, you know, like people do like Twitch and Discord, and there's so many more communities. But I feel like once you can create your community and you can give them enough things that are really useful and valuable to them, then you can start being like, okay, how do I create revenue streams from this? And so what Dame Dash taught me is like, you know, Blueprint's the master. Like we all study him, we worship him, he's our homie, but it's like he's like the pioneer, bro. He's like the first dude to go west and find a gold mine. Like he's that guy being like, oh, there's gold out here. Hello, I'll show you how to come get it if you want to listen. And so he's having him on that record, it was like he and I's just mutual love for Dame Dash, who was just like, yo, I'm going to tell you all the ways to be self-sufficient. I'm going to give you a pathology to be like, I want to hustle to support people I love. And that's it. You know what I mean? It's not like about shining or being like, yo, look at this thing I bought. It's like, I took that money and then put it into this thing. And then that thing can make me money 3 years from now. And then this can set up my family. And so like, it's like being an owner, you know what I mean? Like, and I say this to everybody, like, this is true for you too. You having your podcast, you are a small business owner. You know what I mean? Whatever you feel about that, that's true. You're in charge of it. You know what I mean? It's like, it's your business. And so what do you want to do with that? And so I think like Wrecking Crew, we have a business model. Like Collab Culture has a business model. Me and my label, $3 Pistol, John Wizard, everybody I'm cool with, they have what works best for them. And then how do I fine tune it and make it better? And I think COVID's given us a lot of time to become like better students, because like how we plan on doing 2020, none of it worked for anybody in any capacity. So like, how do you adapt? Like, what are you going to do instead? And we're really lucky because we have the internet, we have smartphones, we have email, we have Twitter, TikTok, podcast. We have so many things, Zoom. Like, it's great to have all these things and people want it and like it. And as long as you keep giving it to them and they're consistent, again, like giving people value, I feel like they're going to reward you with that. And then you got to keep finding new ways. And then we say like on the Dame Dash joint, like he would always talk about the octopus method. Like you got to be able to get things 8 ways. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like sadly, like people learned that during COVID, like if your only way to survive was like having one job and that job's gone, what else are you going to do? You know what I mean? So now people are like, I'm not going back to work. I'm starting an Etsy page. I'm not going back to work. I'm going to be on TikTok all day making content. I'm not going back to work. I'll do DoorDash. I'll flip furniture. Like everyone started realizing like just having one means isn't enough. You know what I mean? It's like, unless you could, you know, make like serious paper and have low expenses. But like, I think we're all now understanding like taking control and being like, I'm going to be in charge. I'm not going to sit back and be like, well, I have this job, so I'm good. You know what I mean? Like that's the biggest risk is doing nothing. Yeah. Like there's no guarantees with anything. Like going back to Vegas Vic, like there is no safety, you know, and I think this has made people realize that. And it's fascinating. It's sad because there's been a lot of, you know, suffering and pain, but it's also been like a big learning lesson for people to be like, yo, yeah, you're right. You know what? Having some stupid job I didn't care about anyway. I'd rather do a podcast and sell, you know, protein powder. I don't know, like whatever it is. Like, let me do that instead. At least I'm in charge of that. And then once you probably feel that, like once you start getting success with it, you get addicted to that. Like, wow, like I did that. Like I seen the numbers grow. I seen the money go up. I've seen my reach expand. I've seen people getting at me more. They weren't doing that 5 months ago, 2 years ago. So it's it's very cool.
I think you touched on it. It is that volatility that I think people like really everybody experienced, and it kind of shook people. And they're like, damn, like you could have lost your job, but even if you didn't, you just realize like, damn, like one, you have a lot more time potentially due to like shit being closed. But I think above all, it's that volatility that kind of showed people like, yeah, life is literally short. You could literally die from one of these fucking viruses. And it's like, do something with your time. And I find it in a way, I hope that this was a positive in a lot of ways, not just like what we're talking about, but just generally of like changing mindsets or coming to grips with some realities that have been true forever, but you didn't have to face it. And we'll see. We'll see. I think definitely when it comes to the music, like I'm noticing just people like I consider you guys just like all like the Wrecking crew, but especially like the things that you're particularly involved in, like the merch god, like fucking like some of that shit you have is just like actually looks amazing, like just from a fashion standpoint. And that's something that I think people are realizing is important. It's like, yeah, you want to make money 8 different ways, like put some style in it. It's not just like, oh, make a generic CD or make a generic t-shirt that has the album cover. It's like, cool, that can be cool, but maybe put some like little sauce on it and it may resonate.
You got to sell the sizzle, not the steak. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You can get steak anywhere. Why would I come to your place for steak? What is it?
Yeah. The last kind of like idea, like aspect of this record that I want to get into is just the idea that it's one producer, one rapper. This is a model that, at least from my vantage point, has like wasn't as prominent in like the 2000s, like that 2000 to 2009. And then I do feel like Run the Jewels was a notable moment because they got so fucking huge. And I feel like ever since then, it's also coincided with me like really getting into music. So that's definitely a reason. But that model has gotten so popular now, and I love it. I just always jump to a record that has one producer, one rapper. It's just personally, I just expect certain things. It'll be more cohesive. It'll have like a personality and all that stuff. But why do you think that has kind of popped off in recent years? If you think it has at all?
Yeah, if you think about the machinations of the industry, right? For the longest time, like in the 80s and 90s, it was one producer. Like it was always that way. It was this guy and this guy, you know, like that's showbiz and AG. Like that, it was like one producer, Pete Rock and CL Smooth, Gangstar. It was like that for years. Like Run DMC was like in-house. I mean, it wasn't just Jam Master Jay, but like it was like always like an in-house thing. And then once Nas came with Illmatic, it was like, oh, we can put like the producer from Tribe Called Quest next to the producer from Gangstar, next to the producer from Main Source. We could put all these guys on an album. Holy shit. So then everyone tried to do like that type of style to have the best people. Whereas like Wu-Tang was like RZA's doing all the beats. You know what I mean? Like he's in the group. So after Nas hit and like Biggie hit, like Biggie had like the bad boy producers. They were like in-house, but there was a bunch of people. And then his second album, he had like RZA on his album. He has Havoc. He has KG from Naughty by Nature. It was like star-studding out the track listing. And all those people had their own hits and their own style. So then it became like that wave for years. And I remember like when 50 Cent and G-Unit were the biggest things out, there was a whole sub-economy of like, how do producers get placed on a Dipset album? How do you get a placement on Young Buck's album? How do you get, so then there was a whole other feeder system of like those dudes being like, we're not going to pay Timbaland or Pharrell $80,000 for a beat. We can just get this dude from Nova Scotia who made one hot beat in his life and give him $2,000. And boom, I get money from 50. That's just like some guy made that beat, right?
Yeah.
So then it became like them of cutting costs to not pay the superstar producer and get like, if you made 1,000 beats in your life, but you made the one hottest beat and no one knows you, I could just give you whatever. You're going to take it because you're a nobody. You know what I mean? Versus like Kanye's going to want 80,000 off top, and he's going to want a cut of the publishing. He's going to want to be in the like. There's a lot of stipulations. So now, once the industry fell apart and everything collapsed, people could just go back to being like, I like this guy's beats. No one's pushing me to have to work with hot producer of the moment. He and I just had the best chemistry. Like, let's just do it. You know what I mean? Like, it's pretty, like even Nas and Hit Boy, they got 3 albums, just them 3. But Nas's entire career was working with 10 producers on 14 songs forever for 25 years. So even he got into a place of like, if that doesn't matter and I just vibe with this guy and I could just put out my own albums whenever I want, I don't need Def Jam being like, we really want you to work with, you know, this person who has 4 hits. We really would prefer you do that. And he's like, no, I'm going to have Hit Boy and that's it. So I think it's like, and the best part is from a producer standpoint is you get to find out who the producer is when he or she gets to do 14 joints, 11 joints versus like 2, you know what I mean? Or 1. And so like you get to see what their ideas are and like where they can go and what their, it's kind of like they're part of the conversation. You know what I mean? It's like having like a 2 hour discussion and you get to hear this person talk for an hour versus 2 minutes. You know what I mean? It's like if I'm going to do the most talking because I'm the rapper, I get an hour, Small Pro gets an hour. Because he's the other element of sound versus like Vegas Vic, which was scattered. You know what I mean? But that was the point. It was like trying to find people that can give me sounds I liked. But like again, Disco Vietnam was the voice in the room, being like,
it still had a consistent
it.
something. Yeah.
Right. So I think having those partnerships is great because it gets to show off the producer and then the rapper who has the chemistry with them. It's just a win-win for everybody. You know what I mean? It's like, it's fantastic, you know? And again, I've done records with a lot of producers. I've done records where there's a lot of ways to do it, but I feel like once you have that, you're stupid to move off of it just because you want to pad a track listing. Like that doesn't really make sense anymore.
And I find like as a fan too, like when I think of like my favorite producers, like that's something that I always go back to think like, do they have, like if I want to like listen to a particular producer, like I do that sometimes. I'm like, damn, do they have like one album that I can just play that they did all of it? Like for me personally, that really matters because there's some great producers that don't have like maybe they linked up with like a not the greatest rapper, or they just don't have an album that they fully produce. Like it matters. I'm just like, I find I just don't go back to it. Like I don't go back to their music as much. Like I love it if one producer has at least something that I go back to. Like Dilla obviously had his own shit, but as a producer, I can go to Like Water for Chocolate. I can go to Fantastic Volume 2 and I just can get him. That matters to me.
Right.
Yeah.
Because again, you allow them to have a voice at the table rather than like a hot 3 minutes. You know, like we were talking about Alchemist in our last episode, where it's like when he was placing hot beats on people's albums, he had like anthem type of beats where it's like he's in a room, he's got to sell somebody in 10 minutes on why they should buy his beat with their budget. Versus now it's like Currency's gonna hang on my sofa for 2 months. Here's all the shit I got.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Like he could just swim in these beats and it doesn't whatever Boldy James, we could just hang out every day for 2.5 months. And then we'll pick the best 12 moments, and that's it.
Yeah, I love that. I love that approach. What was I gonna say? Oh, I forgot it. Oh damn, what was I gonna say? No, we're just talking about The Alchemist. One person. Yeah, I was just thinking of one producer when I was thinking of someone that like I feel like they missed that in their career, but is also generally like a great producer. He's produced a lot of more like pop R&B, but Timbaland, I just wish he would have made one hip hop record front to back, produced it with like a rapper that's dope. I feel like that would have been amazing. Like, and I feel like I wish we got that because he's done like the closest thing. If I want Timbaland beats, I'd go to fucking Future Sex Love Sounds. Like I think he produced the majority of that.
Yeah,
that's a great album, but I wish he had a hip hop version because he's great.
He has the one. I have the CD still. It's called like like either Tim's Bio or Tim's Basement. It's like a compilation album.
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like a compilation.
Yeah, like Jay-Z, Lobster and Shrimp. He didn't do the second Bubba Sparks album, Deliverance. He did a lot of that, but he didn't do the whole thing. I think like Organized Noise has some beats on there. But the best beats like the Timbaland beats on the Bubba Sparks. Who else? You're right. Like he really should have just done a Jay-Z album at this point.
Like or just like a dope rapper of the time, like done anything like that. That would have been good because like he's a guy I don't listen to a lot, even though I always like his beats. Like he's great. He's so versatile.
Really, it's the Missy albums, dude. The Missy albums. Like Construction's crazy. Even they're a Super Duper Fly, but those have like a lot of R&B moments in them, which are cool. He'll do like 4 to 5 on someone's album, but then he doesn't finish it off. Like he has a couple on the one like LL album called like The Definition or something like that, where it's like 80s beats through the Timbaland ear that are really dope. The same thing with those Missy records. He has the Timbaland and Magoo albums, which I love. But like Magoo is, not everybody's cup of tea.
Yeah, I wouldn't say he's my cup of tea. Yeah,
yeah, fair enough.
Okay, last thing I want to talk about is just the podcast that obviously you're a host of. So, host of Call Up Culture. Definitely one of my favorite podcasts for rap content. I'm just curious, like, what has that experience been for you, jumping into the whole podcast space and talking about hip hop from that kind of like not media, but I guess kind of
Mhm.
media lens? Like, how's that been for you? What have you learned?
It's been great, man. I mean, I was when I went to college, I was doing like radio. I was doing like cutting tape, like literal tape on radio, and like putting it together with tape and spooling it together to like do radio. So I was learning, Pro Tools. I was doing all that stuff, like being in studio. So to me, it's like doing that again for school, but I just do it every week now. It's like it's the same thing. I'm like setting up my mic, like making sure it's correct, like all the edits and stuff we do. And so from a technical side and creative side, it's like really fulfilling to me because I was doing this 20 years ago as a young man. And I think on our end, it's just like I think we got something special because we don't stick to like just 90s rap or like just independent rap from 2000s or just whatever. I feel like we'll go anywhere with it because that's what we're into. You know what I mean? And there's
Mm-hmm.
some topics we veto, some of them we'll table for later. Sometimes people request stuff. We're like, nah, like that's not even really interesting. Like you can get 25 other podcasts talk about that. So I think like it's refreshing because we're all just really honest and genuine. Like, and again, like we have that trust with each other as friends where sometimes we get super hot with each other and heated. Like listen to Castro and me going at it on the Odd Future episode. You know what I mean? Or like Castro and Elastic going at it on the Nas episode. But those are like that's what happens when you have like heated debates with people that love rap. Like that
Yeah,
happens all the time.
it's
You know what I mean? At
authentic.
a show
Yeah.
or like in your friend's house or like after the show or at the barbershop. Like that's how people get. But at the end of the day, it's like, like we're just doing it because we love it. So it's interesting to me just to see as the show has progressed. We're like getting closing on 150 episodes. It's like people like support it financially, which is crazy, and I love it. And then people also will be like discovering it at different times and then backtracking and listen to episodes. Like a lot of feedback I get from people is like people discovered it during COVID. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
needing that time just to escape from something, like want to hang out with a couple people. To me, that's what podcasts really are. It's like if you don't really like the hosts or like why would you listen? It's like it's a
Yeah.
way it's like hanging out. You know what I mean? It's like I feel like people get to know us from that space, whether they like our music or not. But I think like we promote the music on the show, it's a big vehicle for our records, like point blank. But I feel like none of it means anything if we weren't just really honest all the time. You know what I mean? Like
Mm-hmm.
we had Blueprint on talk about that once, and Blueprint was like the whole key is just not give a fuck what anybody thinks. Like that's it. They can complain and comment on SoundCloud or Twitter, wherever they
Mm-hmm.
want, but like I'm just gonna do it. If you don't like it, go make your own show because all the tools are there. You can make your own show.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You got a show, which is great. So it's like there's more and more shows popping up all the time. Like I like your show. I like Real Notes with Cinema on the Side. Like
Yeah.
you know,
Really love that.
it's great. It's like Dan O is fantastic. Like Breaking Adams dudes, I like them a lot. Crate 808s, Dad Bod. Next Movement, my man Rob. Like, dude, me and Rob from Next Movement, we were in class together in college
Damn.
doing
No
radio.
way.
That's
No
how we know
way.
each other. You know what I mean? But he and I were doing this in 2003, 2004, like in studios to be graded, like learning
That's
all this
wild.
shit. So it's like for he and I to do this stuff now, it's like, like we're like ringers. Like this shit is easy to us because we did it. But all the tech is there to make it super easy. And just being lifers, I think that's the point. It's like if you're a lifer, you're gonna love it. You know what I mean? Even if you unbelievably disagree with something I say or Castro says or Alaska, like we're coming from it from like deep love and understanding and knowledge to be like, hey man, this is how I feel. And here I'm gonna explain why I feel this way. And you don't even have to like it, but you can understand me. So yeah, I don't even remember the initial question. I'm just rambling,
No,
but
no,
I
that
think
just
it's fun.
generally you covered it. No, I love that's the thing with your show is like the brash honesty. It's like for you, like I go to certain podcasts and like YouTube, I'll add into this for different reasons. Some I do go for more of like a straightforward, concise kind of vibe for like even
Right.
like rap content, for example, like reviews and stuff. But I feel like you guys remind me a lot of like Dead End Hip Hop. Are you familiar with them?
Yeah, yeah. Shouts to them
Like
too, Mike.
that's
We had
what
Michael.
yeah, yeah, and that's what that's what I remember. I always used to love when I first got into them. It's just like I felt like I was hanging out with people and
Right.
talking about hip hop, and they love it, and it's fun. And you never really know what people are gonna say. You might disagree, like being like, "That's the
Right.
wackest opinion," or "That's the weirdest shit I've ever heard." Like, but I love that. I like the friction. I like the idea that you don't know what you're gonna like hear today when they talk about
Right.
something.
Like
Whereas
if
some people, you're
everyone
like,
just
"You're gonna love this. You're gonna not love this. Why do we even watch it to begin with?"
exactly like if everyone just agreeing, it's like, oh yeah, that's a good album. Yep, I think so too. All
Mm-hmm.
right, show's over. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
yep, it's cool. Yep, I think it's cool too. All right, see you later. Like 2 minute episodes, they'd be great. But like, you know, when we butt heads on certain things, or when we do like lineage of greatness, where we're just like, here's why we're going to spend an hour and a half talking why we all love this person, and we'll acknowledge like the flaws or the missteps, because that's being honest too. We're not going to be like, oh man, you know, Jay-Z got like a flawless record, or like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
you know, Raekwon, man, he just everything he does is great. It's like, well, he's
Mm-hmm.
great. He has some missteps because we're fans and we're artists. So it's like we can hear the missteps, but we can also say like overwhelmingly this person is giving me so much joy. Let's celebrate them versus, you know, like just me trashing Common for 2 hours with Sean from the Questions Hip Hop, you know, or like me just trashing Earl in a new episode, even though I'm coming from a place of like frustration.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about our future with him, but then I'm like glowingly praising Haji and Frank Ocean and all those guys, you know. But you know, it's like if I didn't like that, but that's how I've been talking for years anyway. Before we
Mm-hmm.
had a show, like why would I not do that? You know, so I just feel
Yeah.
like being as like you said, like Dead End, like all those dudes. That's how they are, you know. And that's how we are. It's super. It's easy. It should be a breeze to do this. You know what I mean? Just be you.
Yeah.
It's so basic.
Mm-hmm. All right, man. This has been a great conversation. I
Thanks,
want to
bro.
give you one last chance just to talk about any upcoming projects or anything you want to kind of shout out
Yeah,
in 2022.
yeah, no doubt, man. Yeah, so the Career Crooks album, I mean, Never at Peace. I feel like it came out so long ago. It was like 2 months ago, 3 months ago. But yeah, we sold out of all tapes, mini discs, but you can stream it anywhere. We got a nice grip of CDs left, which is great. So our goal is not to just like sell out of everything all the time because people discover music over time. So we got
Mm-hmm.
CDs on hand for that if you want to support it that way. You can stream it on Spotify, Apple, wherever you like. That record's out with me and Small Pro. Vegas Vic CDs, I think, are gone. Maybe tapes or one of them's are definitely gone. There's a few vinyl left, but you can stream that everywhere via Chong Wizard Records. That's my last like pure solo. And then I'm getting ready to do this new Cargo Colts record. Me and Ray West, we're talking our album's done. So that's gonna probably drop like
Nice.
fall. Me and Ray West LP. And then this Andrew album I just put out. The Ray knows what he's doing. I love it, man. I love this guy.
It's a really great
Andrew's like
record.
my
Really
thanks,
impressed.
dude.
Yeah.
I just love like not being a part of this record, just except like helping with arrangement and putting it out. Like he's such a one man army. I don't need to do anything. Like I don't need to rap. None of my friends need to be on it. He's just so self contained and dope and like original and
Merch on that
especially like
too. Like
oof.
the artistic direction. I didn't know he made all that shit. I was like,
Yeah,
this
he's
is
great,
so
man.
beautiful looking. Like, like
He's such an interesting dude because he's just like head to toe covered in tattoos, but he's like the most like kind, interesting, like original guy. You know what I mean? He could, and I was just blown away when I heard his album last year because we knew each other in passing a little bit doing shows, but I locked in with him. So this album, like I said, the Rain knows what it's doing. I got like 4 tapes left. They're about to be gone. We got a nice stack of CDs left though. Like the dad hats, the mugs,
all
like
those hats are
beanies.
so fucking fire.
Thanks. My wife designed the beanie. She just hooked that up real quick. She's like, oh, this will look good, right? I'm
Oh,
like,
nice.
sure. Yeah, so she laced that. The dad hats are selling really well. And then he and I got a joint album called Don't Wait Till I Leave. That's gonna probably come out like I don't know, man, like June, maybe May, June, whenever we want to,
But
you
you
know.
and Andrew?
Yeah, so we have an album. So
Ooh.
he did all the beats. And then he's rapping on half, I'm rapping on all of it. And like that's more like crew involved. So we got like Castro's on the record, Rich Jones on the record, Alaska's on the record.
Nice.
Who else is on the album? Wally Clark. My man Wally Clark's on the record. Wally Clark's dope, man. His album Goon, people sleeping on that shit.
Yeah,
That shit is
I've been starting to get
crazy.
into him recently.
Woo! Yeah, that joint and Banned from All Bars, man. Wally's nasty. Um, trying to think what else. But yeah, so basically this album was like I wanted to just support somebody, and I feel like people listen to me now when I say something's good, and I wanted to test it out. I'm like, all right, if I say this is good with somebody that has no affiliation to anybody, and I could just put it out, like, could that work? And it worked.
Mhm.
And so I'm excited for he and I's album to drop. He just got me in a good space, man. Like that last year, I was just coming off of writing so many things, and his beat, same thing. Every beat he sent me, I was like, ooh, ooh. And so I just banged that joint out like 2 months. So that album
He's got that's gonna be an interesting record to hear you over, because like he has like really like acoustic. He loves those like acoustic
Yes.
guitars, very like organic. It does not feel
Yes.
very traditional, but
Nah.
it's still got like a pocket and everything to rap over. It's an interesting style.
Oh yeah, it's very much like things I was listening to a lot just as a fan. You know what I mean? Like whether it's like Krungbing or like Menahan Street Band or like El Michaels Affair or like what was that dude, Sean Lee? Just records I would just play that were kind of like hip hop adjacent, but I just enjoy to listen to. Like that's what he goes for with these records. So I'm like, man. So yeah, he's like my secret weapon, man. He's an incredible dude. So I was really excited to work on that. And then man, what else is going on? Me and Chong just started the new Midnight Suns. Like just started. And then me and Jason Griff were like 4 songs into a record. So
Damn, you got a lot of shit.
Yeah. I'm just trying to spread it out though. You know what I mean? Like I like putting out 2 records a year, I think is pretty good, but they gotta be very different. You know what I mean? Like I don't like having Vegas Vic and Career Crooks was a good experiment last year. So then this year, if I do like me and Andrew and like me and Ray West, like they're very different records. So that's just kind of like my goal is like early in the year, end of the year, and then people can take time to digest them or catch up on them if they missed them.
Yeah.
And that's it, man. And then we're doing the show every week, Collide Culture, and then we got our Patreon. You can rock with us on that, patreon.com/Collide Culture Podcast. And then if you rock with Castro, man, you want to help this dude because he's got cybernetic limbs now. It's crazy. He can like kick through a brick wall at ease. But it still is challenging. You can support all his music. You can support the podcast. You could hit him up, lace him with a couple bucks if you want. But whatever you want to do, it's valuable and we respect it. And then he's got a lot of work too. So yeah, that's how we want to do. No GoFundMes. You know what I mean? It's like let's be about the art and the music, not just like you'll throw some cash. It's like
there's some dope stuff that they'll put out. I wanted to buy that Kirk Vonnegut Prem shirt. Literally sold out as I was in checkout. I was like I'm not getting an XL. No, I'll just do another form of donation. But the medium was like literally
just bulk up, bro.
What?
Just bulk up, man. Get some sick gains. Eat some protein.
Oh no, man. I don't want to. I'll lose all my. I have to get a whole new wardrobe. I'm a medium. Right. I need to stay in that. Yeah. But man, this has been great. Thank you so much for coming on. Really excited to hear that. Like as you said, like your last couple of years have been your most successful. That's really hope that's just inspirational to other artists hearing this that are
I hope so.
Probably in the beginnings of their careers. So yeah, really appreciate it and happy for you.
Thanks for having me on. Shouts to Ottawa, man. You know, shouts to the Senators. Shouts to Daniel Alfredson. Shouts to Radek Bonk. That's an old.
Wow, that's now I know you really follow hockey. Radek Bonk is a nice second line fucking center. Radek maybe Bonk. That was good.
He was my favorite. I just love looking at his. I would always pick him in NHL '96. I'm like, this dude's name is Radek Bonk.
Just a great dude. What is he, like Serbian or Russian or something?
Oh my god,
Czechoslovakia, like Czech Republic, something like that. Like,
yeah, well, I'm half Czech. I'm half Czechoslovakian, half Irish, so I always have a soft spot for it. I'm like, bro, your name is Radek Bonk. That's incredible. I loved him so much. Shouts to him. Shouts to the Senators. Shouts to you, man. Thanks for having me.
Hey, all right, peace out, man. Take care.
Peace. All right, bro.
So there we have it, another episode of the Rap Music Plug podcast presented by QLC TV. I hope this episode gave you some new perspectives and insights into what the greatest art form known to man in hip-hop music has to offer. If you want to support the show in the most meaningful way possible, it would be my absolute honor to have you as a patron in the new Rap Music Plug podcast Patreon. Through this Patreon, you will be getting exclusive content such as bonus episodes, exclusive album recommendations, exclusive playlists, early access to episodes, and more. And above all, though, you will be able to support the show directly in a way that will not only justify the crazy amount of time I spend on this show already, but allow me to cover some of the expenses related to supporting all of these great artists that we cover on the show through the website, and will allow us to sustain and build on this amazing growth that the RMPP has experienced recently. Big shout out to Dano of Free Music Empire, Levy, Mahima, Jeff, Fatman Toom, and Khalid for your generous support through the Patreon. I really appreciate it. So if you have any questions about any of the Patreon stuff, or just want to keep tabs on the show, interact with me on rap music and all the great stuff that we can talk about, follow me on Twitter and Instagram at rapmusicplugpod, or shoot me an email at qlctv.podcast@gmail.com. You can also rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts and subscribe on YouTube and Spotify as well. But that's enough self-promotion for this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Peace.